welcome to Committee Conversations Ethics Edition. Today we're going to be looking at meeting 16 of the Ethics Committee from November 19th. In this meeting, they're continuing their ongoing review of the Conflict of Interest Act, and today's guest is Michael Sabia, Clerk of the Privy Council and Secretary to the Cabinet, also known as Carney's right-hand man. The whole hearing is about 2 hours long and will be linked in the description, so anybody that has the time or the self-loathing that wants to go and check it out, there'll be a link right there for you. Now let's talk about the highlights as I see them, because there's not a whole lot of it that is going to set your hair on fire. He asked originally off the bat for 8 minutes for an intro, but then at the end he offers a very nice and brief summation of basically, we already have a great system, there's nothing to see here. But let's hear him say it.
And to summarize, Chair, we created a system that we find very rigorous. It is applied very carefully. The public service is very aware of its responsibility to ensure the integrity of our institution and of the Prime Minister's office.
See what I mean? Now, he really sets the tone with that, and even his first round with the NDP, Luke Thiroux, but he starts it off, even with Michael Barrett in the very first round, asking him a very simple opener, and it takes him, well, let's just look.
Mr. Barrett, please. On what date did the ethics screen for the Prime Minister come into force?
Mr. Barrett, there really are two stages in this process. The screen that is in place now, the result of pretty exhaustive work on the part of the Ethics Commissioner with respect to the disclosure provided by the Prime Minister. That screen was put in place, I believe, on July the 10th. Prior to that, on an interim basis, a somewhat simplified screen was in place from very shortly after the Prime Minister became Prime Minister and until the more fully elaborated screen came into place on July 10th.
Are you able?
So there it is. 50 seconds it took him to answer that question, and all he really said was the initial screen was implemented right away, and the full screen, after the Ethics Commissioner reviewed his holdings, went into effect on July 10th. There's nothing controversial. There's nothing to be hidden. There's nothing bombshell in there. I don't understand why waste the time. Maybe part of that is due to what he sees his role to be. And he answers that while talking with Luke Thiroux. And let's check that out.
That my role is to protect the Prime Minister and his institution against the perception of a conflict of interest.
Now, I disagree with his assessment here. I see his obligation more to being that of protecting the office and the institution, the office of the Prime Minister and the institution of our government from the fallible and corruptible people that inhabit it. Whereas he seems to see himself almost as more of like a publicist, where his job is like to convince Canadians that there are no conflicts and that they should have trust. And it seems like in that role, for him to admit that Mark Carney even isn't conflicted would be against that job. So his job is really to sell us on the fact that that Mark Carney is an ethical person and that we don't have anything to worry about. He doesn't seem to realize that type of an attitude of my job is to protect them from bad perception is very much, in my opinion, the reason why trust in these institutions is falling. Is they're constantly looking out for protecting their self-image and making sure we don't think something's wrong, instead of being able to admit, hey, yeah, we had something wrong and now we're fixing it. And so we're going to go on, despite Luc Theroux and many other MPs, but Luc Theroux did a great job of trying very hard to get him to realize what he was saying, and he just kind of dances around it like some sort of old-timey court gesture. Don't look at the king, don't look at the king, which, I mean, I guess in his own description is kind of what it is. He tries very hard not to say the obvious. So let's just watch him try and dance around the questions and filibuster his answers. I've sped up this example to about 1.5 times, so it's not so painful for you guys. So check this out. This is pretty much a summation of what the entire meeting comes down to.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Mr. Sabia. On November 3rd, you made your declaration of conflict of interest. You sold your assets for Brookfield. Why? When I learned that I was investing in Brookfield, that was in the process that I was going through with the ethics commissioner in his office, because all of my assets had been in a blind trust and had been there for years. It was on September 24th, the commissioner's office told me, and with other investments that were shared, I saw that I had investments in Brookfield. And so my response was clear. I quickly decided to sell those shares, because as an administrator, it was simpler, it was more practical to not invest in Brookfield, given the Prime Minister's position and given that my role is to protect the Prime Minister and his institution against the perception of a conflict of interest. I decided to sell because it was simpler. That's great, Mr. Sabia. And so you were aware that there could be a potential conflict of interest, or at least the appearance of a conflict of interest. It wasn't a conflict of interest, and it was simpler to avoid that appearance. When did you sell your assets? I made that decision. I'm not sure exactly. I think it was 30 minutes after seeing that Brookfield was on the list. With C5, which was adopted very quickly, it has to do with economic development strategies, and Brookfield would be impacted, for example, because it has railway lines and natural gas treatment facilities, oil sands, and is present in ports. These are all areas that will be impacted by C5, and Brookfield has assets in all those areas. Is that why you sold your assets? Because it would have been simpler to manage the situation? No. I decided to sell because I wanted to better play my role as an administrator for the institution and for the Prime Minister. It was not linked to C5 or anything like that. But you can agree that there's the problem of the appearance of a conflict of interest because of the role played by the Prime Minister and Brookfield's assets and with the government's economic plans. If not, you wouldn't have sold. One moment, I just want to finish my question, please. If the ethics commissioner raised that, flagged it, and requested a screen, that means that there was a potential appearance of a conflict of interest. I'll say it again. I decided to sell because there's a screen that protects the Prime Minister. And at the commissioner's request, I did not have to submit a screen. I knew that the Prime Minister had investments in some of Brookfield's activities, and so to better manage the screen, I chose to sell my shares. So it's not a matter of a conflict of interest. It was just to simplify things. Simplifying things. What does that mean? Simplifying things because you wanted to be able to apply the screen that was required? What are you simplifying then? It was clear given the role that the Prime Minister played in Brookfield, and it was clear that Brookfield would be an important part of my activities as an administrator. And so to simplify those activities, because it was clear that Brookfield would be at the heart of many of my decisions. And so, in order to simplify those decisions, I decided that it would be simpler to sell. Thank you, Mr. Sabia. Thank you, Mr. Thériault.
It's like pulling teeth with this guy. He's doing everything he can to say what he wants said and not admit what is staring him right in the face, which is kind of frustrating to say the least. Now, keep in mind, he can speak at a much more normal pace when he wants to. Check out this clip of him sneaking in a great little humble brag of just how big the company that he used to manage was and is.
The private sector from where you came from has higher standards than what I see displayed in the tool and in the screen than the Government of Canada. How do you justify that?
Well, so here's my answer to that. I ran what is now a $500 billion investment fund.
You're going to have to be quick, Mr. Sabia.
Well, I ran a $500 billion investment fund for 11 years. It was $375 billion when I left. And we had lots of screens and ways of protecting against conflict of interest. We were able to do that successfully without any incident over the period of time that I was there, over those period of 11 years. I would say that the operation of the screen here in the Government of Canada for the Prime Minister is every bit as rigorous as any screen I have seen in the private sector pretty much ever.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Majid.
So that pretty much sums up what the rest of this was. A lot of tap dancing around the truth and people trying to get real answers out of him and him not getting that. Now, in every committee meeting, the chair has the privilege of asking a question and adding a bit of commentary should he choose to do so. Now, this is not a common thing. It's quite rare. I've never seen John Brassard himself do this. It's definitely not out of pocket or scandalous in any way. Chairs of both sides have done it many times in the past. It's just not necessary in a lot of cases. But he asks here a very interesting question and has some very interesting, insightful commentary, in my opinion, around this whole issue, and especially summating the frustration I think so many people felt if they did watch this or even watching clips of this, where people are commenting about contempt of Parliament for his long answers. But let me know what you think about anything in the video, but especially what John Brassard says here, his questions and the back and forth that goes on a bit. Love to hear what you're going to say. I'm going to be doing meeting 17. I've got it downloaded, so that'll be coming out soon here as well. Remember to stay awesome, everybody. And in the immortal words of Red Green, keep your stick on the ice. We're all in this together, and I'm pulling for you. Peace.
Conflict. Thank you, Mr. Thériault.
Question for you. And I've been keeping notes of some of your testimony throughout the course of these 2 hours. One of the comments that you make is that you work within how the current legislation functions. And herein lies the problem, sir, and that is, as it relates to the general application rule, the Conflict of Interest Act is so open to that you can actually drive a truck through it in terms of that general application rule, because you gave examples about how a policy decision is made on the part of the country, and then there are very specific layers that happen as a result of that. The problem is that, we're in a situation right now where some of the witnesses that have come before us have said we've never had a prime minister as conflicted as this, and here's the problem. The problem is that on some of these major policy announcements, Mr. Thériault referred to artificial intelligence, modular homes, heat pumps, small nuclear modular reactors, and, for example, the lumber business. there is within the Prime Minister's portfolio that's being held, as we all know, in a blind trust, deferred stock units, options, and bonus incentives related to that, notwithstanding the fact that there are stocks within there. And I know you said you're making a serious effort, and the difficulty in that is under the transition fund, there are many, many entities related to that. So my question to you is, for the sake of the confidence that Canadians have in their designated public office holders, whether it's the Prime Minister or the Minister, you mentioned that you divested yourself of Brookfield assets because you did not want that to be perceived, real or otherwise, as a conflict of interest. Do you not believe, sir, that when a person runs for Prime Minister and is that conflicted, should they not divest themselves of all of the assets to ensure that we can have public confidence, restore public confidence, that the person who is holding the highest office in the land is not benefiting from decisions that are being made, whether they're on a general basis, given the policy announcements that have been made, and when you layer it down to the specifics, there is the potential for profit to be made. Do you not believe, sir, that complete divestment is the answer in this case? And I understand there's tax implications, but we're talking about the confidence that Canadians have in the office holder in the highest office of the land. Do you not believe divestment should be the option?
Honestly, Mr. President, I think I come back to something that I said earlier. And to be blunt, I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's that simple because I think, given the issues facing Canada today, this is a time when Canada needs to be able, and it's not just the Prime Minister I'm talking about, I'm thinking about ministers, I'm thinking about other senior people coming into government, where we need access to the best talent that this country can provide. I think that's fundamentally important because this country faces a set of challenges, the likes of which we probably haven't faced since the Second World War. That, I think, requires careful judgment about striking a balance between, on the one hand, the very legitimate point you make with respect to confidence and accountability and transparency, which is what the screen is all about, and why we are being so diligent and so careful about that screen, because I endorse 100% the importance of those principles in the eyes of Canadians. On the other hand, we also have to be able to get the best talent that we can because Canada needs it. And therefore, I would urge you, it's your decision. You folks got elected. I didn't get elected. It's for you to decide what that legislation should be. My job, as I've said, is I run the system that exists today. Your job is to say what should it be, and is the current system adequate? I would just urge you, in thinking that question through, to not create a set of barriers that make it impossible for talented people to come to the aid of the country at a time when we need access to the best talent that we can possibly have. And I can assure you, Mr. President, because I live it, that attracting people into the government of Canada today is not easy. There are many barriers, be it compensation barriers, be it post-employment guidelines, be it X, Y, Z. It is not easy. Now, we work within those rules because those rules are important and we do the best we can. But having access to the best talent that this country has to offer, that seems to me to be, I'll put it this way, an extremely important priority because we got to get this country going and moving forward.
And I would submit to you, sir, that we can draw that talent without the backdrop of whether an individual who is in that office, whether it causes Canadians to wonder and causes parliamentarians to wonder whether they are personally benefiting from being in the position that they're in.
And that goes, Mr. President, to the rigor with which we run this system. And I can assure you, I mean, if I've done anything
The rigor, Mr. Sabia, comes with complete divestment. It's the only way to deal with this. And I don't want to argue with you this point, but Canadians have to have confidence in the person who is running this country that they're not benefiting from it. And if for the reason you say, for the virtuous reason that a person makes to want to run as a designated public officer or the Prime Minister, then that should be part of the backdrop of the decision-making process they make in deciding to run and come back, as you say, to save this country. That should be the number one consideration, in my view, in that decision that they make to come back. That they come back for a virtuous reason, not to profit and not to benefit. And we have to, we as a committee are charged, and I agree with you on this, and we've heard from lots of witnesses who've talked about this loophole within the Act that needs to be challenged and changed. And we are going to have a decision to make. But again, we're not trying to do this for any one individual. We have to do this in order to protect the integrity of the office of the Prime Minister and to ensure Canadians that decisions aren't being made in the best interest of any individual, that it's being made in the best interest of the country.
Well,
so
Mr.
I want to
President,
thank you.
What I would say is I think we both share the view and we share the goal of protecting the integrity of the country and continuing to reinforce the confidence that Canadians have in the institution of the Government of Canada. I don't think there's any disagreement between me or you or other members of the committee that's very important.
And the only way to do that is to change this massive loophole within the law as it relates to the general application rule. So, Mr. Sabia, I want to thank you for the time that you spent with the committee. Thank the committee members. I also want to thank the clerk and the analysts for today.